Of all the tools I've received in the shop that people have made and or just sent me in new tools, etc., this is one of the more productive things. It really works well. Alan Dust made this out of some PVC tubing and some sandpaper rollers here and things, and you hook it into your drill. Now what I found that works the best is to turn your drill in reverse. That keeps it from unscrewing because it has nuts and things on here, so it keeps it tight. And you can hold this because this spins, and you can control it really, really well. I'm amazed how well it works. Oh, that does a beautiful job. It just makes it as smooth as silk and really does a nice job. Yeah, that's just really, really fine. This is just still even as nice as it is, and it's pretty darn nice right now. It's maybe almost finished. I'm just trying to even it up and get it fairly smooth so that I can fit this to the guitar. And I just want it close before I get it fitted to the guitar. I can always fit it some more. But anyway, that's what I'm working on. I believe that'll be good enough. So we'll show you a little close-up of how nice that did. For right now, at least, I think that's close enough. It's a little flat right in here, I can tell, and I'd probably be better off turning it a different direction for me working on that where I can see that better. I couldn't see that when I had it up like this. So yeah, I'm going to work on that a little bit more because that's still a little flat right there. But I'll turn it a different way. I'll get it organized here and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Well, I turn my neck holding jig around in the vise a different direction, and this allows me to get in here where I can sit down and hold this very comfortably and do a better job. For Alan's benefit, if you want some feedback on this, there's a couple things I think I would do to make this a little bit better. One of would be, and I don't even know if this exists, Alan, but you might try a left-handed threaded rod. If you could get a left-handed threaded rod and left-handed nut, that way you could run your drill in forward. Not that that really matters that much. It's not a big deal. The other thing I think I would do would be to maybe shorten this a little bit. I mean, it's nice to have the grip and the long grip, but I personally don't need it. This knob here is really what I'm holding on to, and you could shorten this up by maybe just have 1 inch out here on this knob, and you'd still have plenty of clearance. And it would make this a little bit more compact where you could get it into tighter places and things. Now that's just my opinion and the way I use it. If somebody else may have a different opinion. But I tell you, this is a very, very, very nice tool. So I just thought I'd throw that feedback out there to Alan, and if he might want to start making these things and selling them, because I really think they're really nice. Now that I've done all the sanding with Alan Dust's little sander drill implement there that he sent to me, that thing's really a handy little outfit. I'm going to now start drawing out where the neck slot needs to be on this thing. And I like to draw it out in pencil first and try to get it, centered up and everything. And then for the most part, I just cut it freehand with a dovetail router bit. So here we go. I'll show you how I do that. I'm over here at Caleb's station because I have a big square vise there, bench vise, and you can see I've got some towels in there, and I've got the body of the guitar held firmly in place, and the router, as you can see, is right there as well. Then I just have to straddle in there and on my chair, which is barely enough room between the laser cutter, but I think I can squeeze it all together. So that's what the situation looks like, and now we'll see if we can get this cut. And it looks like it's going to be fine, but I'm going to go ahead and get my dust mask on because I can see this is going to be ugly. I knew that already, but I just forgot.
I recall.
You probably can't hear me, but I have set the router to the full depth, and I'm going to cut it again. Here we go. After I plug it in. Plugging in is a good thing.
I lost her on the mountain. Now I'll cry forevermore. Now
Well, I'd say that's the name of that tune. That looks to me like that's as accurate as it needs to be, done by hand. There you go. Just about as good as it gets. Does it fit the neck? That's the only real problem or question. I don't know. Let's see. We haven't stopped the camera. Oh boy, not too bad. It's actually pretty tight already. Whoops, not that tight, but it's pretty tight. Yeah, it doesn't have much play, a little bit of play. I'm in an awkward position here, so before I go breaking something, I'm going to get out of here and get back to my desk and show you what we got. But it's not bad. It's not bad at all. I might have, perhaps should have set the bit just a hair deeper, maybe. I'm tempted to just maybe set it just a hair deeper and maybe run back through it one more time yet. But I could easily cut that out with a chisel too. I don't know. I think I'll just do it with a chisel. No point in pressing your luck, you know. Well, just fitting this up here, I can tell where the problem is. You can see that it's rocking here like this. And that's because it's catching on perhaps these inside edges and on right here on these outside corners of the actual dovetail itself. So this up in here is too narrow, that's for sure. I know that. Let's go ahead and start trimming that off. And we know that's a little bit tight, so let's just trim a little bit off here, and that'll give us a little bit of clearance to get us going. And now I would say, based on what I'm seeing here, it's these edges. It seems like it's this edge right here that's catching everything, so I'm just going to go down through there and straighten it out because it's a little crooked from the router bit. That ought to be a little bit more. And that brought it in there quite a bit more. Now it really doesn't have much play. It's got just the least little bit of play. Not much though. Still lifts just a little bit, which indicates that it's up in here where it's still grabbing. We're getting there, not too far off already. We got a 1/4 inch to go. I think I'm at the point where I want to start looking at the straightness, all those kinds of things matter right now. So before we get any further, so I'm going to do a lot of looking at it off camera and just making sure everything looks straight and at the right angle, all of those things. And I'll show you anything I come up with. Okay. What I did was I measured up and found where my 12th fret would be. Then I doubled that back here so I'd have an idea about where I want to measure the height. By the way, I checked the straightness down through here and it's like as perfect as it could be. So I don't have to worry about that too much right now. But I do want to care about this angle. This neck angle is always the issue, so you want to make sure you do it right. And what I'm really doing right now is looking to see how much it's climbing, and it's climbing at a pretty good rate. That might be too much. So what I want to do is measure, well, let me think about this here. I think I'm just going to measure right here the height and measure back there the height and see what the difference is. The difference is what matters. That's how high you would be above the plane of the neck. So when this gets all the way down. So let me do some measuring here. I'll tell you what that works out to be. Okay, right now we're at, I'll double check it, I'll do it again, but I got 312 my first check, and I check it again, I get 312, 313, so we're going to call that close enough. 312 is what we're at right now. I'll just go ahead and write that down so that I don't forget by accident, and I couldn't possibly forget, I'm sure, but anyway, just in case I do. 312, and now what we need to do is try to get an accurate measurement back here at this spot. And that's a little harder to do. There's ways to do it. Tell you what I think I'll do. I'll be right back here in a minute with a good way to do that. Okay, so what I did was I just put a little tiny wooden block in there. Then I slide in my taper gauge till it touches, and it touches at 130 thousandths. So now all I really have to do is measure the thickness of this at about that point there and add it together. This came out to 449. 449 and 130 is 579, and then you minus the 312. So let's just do that. So 579 minus 312 equals 267. So that's more than 1/4 of an inch raise. So in other words, if this was down flush, we'd still be high here by 267 thousandths. And I can tell you for sure that's more than I want. 125 thousandths, in my opinion, half of that would be too much. So I want to get it down to about 100 thousandths right here at the most. 95 thousandths would be great. So we've got to change this angle like this. In other words, I've got to tilt this up to change that, and it doesn't take a lot. You may think, well, that's impossible. You'll never get that in this last little bit. Trust me, you can change this a whole lot by the slightest amount of movement down here. So the trick is I want to try to do it very accurately, and I'm not exactly sure how that's going to happen yet. So I'm going to do a little bit of thinking on this, and I'll show you what I come up with. I just started with the carbon paper, inserting it in there, and I don't know if that's showing up or not, but anyway, you can probably, yeah, you can see it there now, the black, and a little bit more insight in here too. So I'm just going to be doing a lot of that for a while here, and I'll show you as I make some decent progress. I'll show you what that looks like. Basically, you just keep doing that, and if you do it well and don't cut off too much, then your fit gets tighter and tighter all the time, and you really start to see more and more black touching all the time, and that's because you're getting it all at the same level, you know, same straightness or whatever. But right now it's quite off because we're just starting that process, and I'm just cleaning that up and just doing that. Though when you knock off those highs, the neck will go in there further this time for sure, and it went in a little bit further, there's no question. And the thing about that is I try to see, is it tight? And now it's actually tight. I think I can I can pick up the whole guitar by just the neck now. It's that tight. Very, very snug. That little bit of difference there really made the difference. Now I'm curious if that changed much on my angle here. And this is the thing I really have to watch. I have to watch my angle. And I'm going to keep checking that a lot here. So what I'll do is test the height here first, because this is the important thing. And I'm getting 269. I'll double check it. A little bit more that time. About 269. So we're going to call that good enough. We'll put the little block here again. We'll set this on here again. And we'll slide the taper gauge in here yet again, if you can see that all on camera. And let's see where we hit this time. Hopefully a lot less. It's not a lot less, unfortunately, because I was really hoping it would be quite a bit less, but honestly it's still at about 125, or I mean 115. 115 is where it's at. Let's see what the difference is here when I add all this up. So we got 449 for the block plus 115 equals minus 277 equals, wow, if anything, we went the wrong way. We're higher now. We're even higher. That's not good. That's not good at all. I'm not exactly sure where I want to take off yet. I'm going to think on that a little bit, because I want to make it start tilting this way. So far all I've done was take off the high spots, which really improved things a lot. So now we're at least kind of tight and level. So now any change I make now should actually change the actual angle. So we'll start thinking on that real good here. Okay, I've pretty much made up my mind that I am actually going to have to trim off a little bit of this. Now it doesn't take very much, so I'm making a pencil mark mostly just for, you know, eyeball reference, really. It's not, you know, I haven't measured anything. I'm just kind of, you know, making a mark there for just reference, really, and to kind of keep my lines straight. And again, I'm going to do the same on this side. And I will tell you, I'm just, it's a very small amount. But I am going to whittle it back on that straight line to that small amount and then see where we're at. I think that'll make a huge difference, even though it's a very, very tiny amount of adjustment. This chisel is very sharp, so I think that's the best way to do it, is just take my chisel and just work along here until I get it all cut. I'm not going to film all this because it's going to take me a few minutes to chisel this down and chisel both sides down in addition. So I'll show you what it looks like on my next step. Well, I just did my calculations again, and my angle now would make me 0.187 high here, which I think, if I remember my math right, it's about 3/30 seconds, something like that. I don't know. I'm not that good with math. Let me just tell you what that is. Yeah, 3/16. I said 3/30 seconds, but I meant 3/16. So anyway, we're about 3/16 high, which we've definitely dropped it some, but we still got some more to go, and we could go about that much more, and we'd probably be just about right. So, you know, that the joint's good and tight here. I kind of think I'm going to do the exact same thing I did. The negative of that is that makes me have to cut more out of the bottom of this too, just so that this fits in there, because I'm taking it off the front edge of here. So I am going to do that again. I'm going to take a little more off these two faces to change the angle. And you know, it's a possibility that if I do this too much, we'll end up having to shim it on the inside, but that's okay, just to tighten it up. But if we have to, we have to, but we've got to get the angle right. That's the most important thing of all of this. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. If you don't get the neck angle right, you just wasted a lot of time, money, energy. Okay, again, I'm just barely marking it, honestly, and I'm just trying to keep it a good straight line. I'll just do all that cutting again off camera and get that, and then test it one more time. Well, as I was fitting this up a little bit and getting the neck angle closer, I got the sideways off a little bit, so I had to trim quite a bit more off of this side to bring it back over. And I keep having to cut more off the back of this. I kind of wish I would have just routed that a little deeper. Would have made things a little easier, but it's not that hard to cut it with the chisel anyway, so it's not a big deal. I'm going to measure this again, and I'll just go ahead and give you the measurements right on camera this time and see what we got. All right, we're still a little high here, of course. I'm going to call it 156. So let's say that's 156, and let's see where we are back here. All right, so to test it back here, I've got this ruler laying there to take up the space because I don't have anything the right height. And now I'm putting the taper gauge in there. And with the ruler and the taper gauge both, I'm measuring 135. So let's see what those two add up to. So we got 135, and then the ruler thickness, I have no idea, so let's check that real quick. It's 78 thousandths, 78, so we add those together, that's 213 minus 156, so we're getting really close now, 57 thousandths. Yeah, 64 thousandths would be just about what I'm looking for, 70 thousandths, somewhere in there. So we're real close now. I think, you know, it's late in the day. I've been working on this all day long. I don't want to get myself in any big hurry. We're so close now to the angle being right that I'm just going to finish this tomorrow because it'll just be, I'll be fresh, and I think I can do a better job. And these are the kinds of things you don't want to mess up. This is very, very important. And if you do it right, it'll last the life. It'll last the life of the guitar. You know, this thing about needing neck resets all the time is just a bunch of hooey. If you do it right, it'll last forever. It's the next morning, and I am about ready to measure my neck angle. I've cleaned it up a little bit more this morning already with the carbon paper and all that. So I've got the straight edge on here. I laid this ruler on here to take up the space because this gauge here only goes to 150 thousandths, and it's higher than that. So I can run this under here now, and I'm hitting it about 95 exactly. So 95 thousandths. And so we write that down, 0.095, and then we just need to know the thickness of the ruler again, and I knew that yesterday, but I've forgotten today what that is. And it is 0.077, or 0.078 actually, 0.078. We add those two together, 173, and we're at 138 here. So if we take 173 minus 138, and that equals 35. So we're actually low right here now. Going a little past where I want to be. I want a little more angle than that. I would like to see it at minimum of about 50 thousandths, and prefer to see it right at a 1/16 of an inch, which is 62.5 or 0.0625. I'm going to measure this all again one more time here just to be sure, because this is very critical at this point. Right now it's going higher. It's going to 120. That's good. Now, I don't know what the difference is. I did pull down on the neck a little bit. That makes a difference. Yeah, 120. So 120 and 78 is 198, and then we minus the 38, and so we're at 60. Now that's perfect. When I measured it last night, that's about what I got. So to me, that's perfect. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. I think I'm close enough. So we're going to go ahead and try to fit this on down in there a little bit further. And I think the best way to do that, I'm going to cut a fresh piece of carbon paper because I've used this one quite a bit. and we'll show you how we do that last little bit. Okay, so I'm going to put the carbon side out the first time to mark the inside of the joint here. In other words, this will mark the block, not the neck itself or the neck heel itself. So this will mark the block on the inside, and I'm putting it in there, and I kind of wiggle it around as much as I can, just kind of force it in there. I usually do it twice, push it back down in there and force it a little bit. Okay, that marks that, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn the carbon paper inside like this and mark the heel of the neck itself, and do the same thing again. And getting pretty good mark all the way down on that side, a little bit off on this side. So we'll very, very, very lightly clean this up, as light as we can actually. In fact, on this side, there's not much there. I'm gonna go ahead and just scrape it, kinda, hopefully keep it flat. I'm going to scrape this side too. It's touching pretty much all the way down. There is a chance that I'm bottoming out. It kind of does look that way too. Now that I look down here, I see some bottoming out, so that may be a problem. So I'm going to cut that out of there a little bit. And then in the very bottom of the hole here, it looks like I'm kind of bottoming out just a little bit. So I think what I'll do there, so I'll take my little double cut file and I'm going to cut some off of the bottom here where I can see it rubbing. Actually, this might not be enough because we still have quite a bit of ways to go, 1/8 of an inch. So if this is rubbing, we've probably going to have to do quite a bit, but we'll see. I'm going to cut off the insides here where I can see the obvious rubbing. The only other thing I'm going to try here is just take the file and just kind of rub it in here and flatten this off a little bit. Well, my friends, I'd like to tell you this has been an easy fit up. I'd really love to tell you that, but it's just taken a lot of time. It's not been really hard, it's just taken lots of time. Just microscopic removal and refitting and testing and etc. and so forth. According to my calipers, or my calipers, since I can never find them and they leap all over the shop, anyway, according to them, I'm 9 thousandths away from perfection. And as I was remarking to my colleague over here, if I glued it in right now, that would be better than a whole lot of necks I see. But anyway, I gotta figure out where it's rubbing still and get it down in there just a teeny bit more. We're just 9 thousandths proud right now. And you know, you could force that, but the problem with forcing that is that you could also bust your block inside, because when you force a wedge in, it doesn't give much and it'll bust something. So I want it tight, extremely tight, and right now there's absolutely zero play in this. If I see, I'm shaking the body and you can see it doesn't move at all. And of course, that doesn't mean I don't hit things on my table, but you can tell I can shake the body and nothing. It's not moving whatsoever. It's tight as it can be. So it just, in fact, it's tight enough that it's difficult to remove. So I think one more pass, you know, I keep saying that, but I think one more pass may be all I need. So here we go. I think that might be it. That I can tell it went in a little bit more that time. you could make a case that that's flat. You could sand that and get that flat pretty quickly. And the good thing is that it didn't change it, so you can still tell it's really tight. It's very tight, in fact. There's no wobble to it at all. Yeah, I think it's just about perfect. When I sight down it, that reason you might wonder why I had this little piece of blue tape here, that's so I can line up the center, and I can look right down the center here and right down that groove and see the edge of that tape, and that kind of tells me I'm straight on. Yeah, that's the quick way to do it. Just look right straight down the line, and it looks real straight that way too. So as far as I can tell, I think I'm going to call that done, because that, I mean, seriously, I can't even feel it there. Just the tiniest bit on this corner over here, like I said, it's slightly lower over here than it is on this side. But it's so minor that nobody would ever know. And I just told you guys, now you know. Well, my friends, we're pretty far along with this now. The neck is fitting in there really nicely. Now I need to cut the purfling slots for both sides of the neck. And the only problem with that is, first thing is that the truth is this white thing is a little off center, so it's not perfect. So one of these I've got to cut over the white, which is this one here. The other one I have to cut it just off the white, you know, right at the edge of the white. That will equal out the binding on both sides when I do that, and that's perfectly fine. No one will ever know that this white thing wasn't where it should have been perfectly. It doesn't matter. It's just that it ends up perfect when we're done, and it will. And the only other problem I have is, how do you cut that perfectly straight and get it, you know, just as good as you can get it? Well, if there was an easy way to clamp something on here, I'd probably do that. But yeah, it's kind of not an easy thing to clamp anything to. You know, if I could clamp a straight edge on here and then have the router follow that, that would probably be fine. But how do you clamp something to this? Now I could temporarily CA glue something, but then you got the CA glue mess to clean up, and who knows what all damage you could create that way too. You might be able to two-way tape something down, and maybe I'll explore that before I do it by hand. But the problem is I'm running off to the edge right here. I'm just about out of edge. You know, it's starting to go down the hill in order to accommodate this wide base. But I'll see if I can't find a way to tape a straight edge on there, because I do think that would help if I could do that. Otherwise, I'll be cutting this totally by freehand. And I believe I could do that too, but I would just as soon have a straight edge if I could. So I'll see what I can come up with. Well, my friends, I have tried, and I have tried, and I tried at least 3 to 4 times to get myself a straight edge on here and get happy with it. I could get a straight edge on there, but I could never get happy with it. Every time I got it on there, it was off just slightly, or it wouldn't stick good, or there was just some problem every time. Yeah, after 3 or 4 times of trying and failing, I'm doing it freehand. Sorry. I know some of you just hate it when I do it freehand. Some of you can't believe I can do it freehand. And I'm about to find out if I really still can. And we're talking a very narrow line here and a very straight line. And I don't want to screw this up. I really don't. So I'm not doing this to impress anybody. I'm doing it to get the job done. Here we go. I hope it works. Okay, my problem is I need more light and I need my air blowing. He's got a light hookup for this, so I'm going to get that, and I'm going to see if I can hook up my air to this, because it's just making it solid sawdust really fast. And I'll also put on a respirator, even though this is the tiniest little bit in the world that I'm cutting with. So yeah, that's not even, yeah, it's about a 1/16 of an inch is what it is. Oh well, we'll have a take two here in a minute. Well, fixing this up was simple. Not. It was, I just took a piece of strapping here, like pipe strapping, strapped it around this plastic tubing. The plastic tubing is connected back to my air compressor, and it's blowing right down on the bit like it should. I connected his light switch up here, this little light deal, and you can see the light on there. It's pretty bright. So I think I'm ready to go. Let me get suited up. Are you kidding me? I think the blade's loose. And I even tightened it with the pliers. Take 3, 4, 5, 6, something. Here we go again, I think.
And I'll cry forevermore.
It was a tough fight, Ma, but I think I got her done. And I cut it really very straight. I'm impressed with how straight it is, and I didn't go outside the lines. Now, I will probably have to clean the whole thing up with a chisel on both sides, but that's okay. You know, I don't have a problem with that. And it's only going to take a microscopic cleanup on both sides, but it will have to be cleaned up. While I'm all set up, I think I'll go ahead and just route the other side and get that over with. Can't imagine why I would think that was difficult. I think I got it done. At least good enough. Now go to the chisels. Here we go. Well, I did get the slots cut in there. And you can see them there. They're pretty accurate, I think. The problem is I'm going to have to go right down on them and just clean them up very, very, very carefully. This may not be as easy as I was hoping. It's going to be very difficult. So I'm going to get this down where I can control it and clean it up. I don't know if I'll be able to film it or not, but basically I've just got to clean up both sides and get this little purfling down in that slot. That's really what it amounts to. I'll show you what progress I can show you. Well, here's how I'm working on it at the moment. And this may be what I have to do for quite a while. I'm just going through and trying to edge that line just as much as I can and get it just as straight as I can. And it's going to take quite a while of doing that, so I'm probably not going to film a whole lot more of it because it's just going to take quite a while. I'm going to turn it around here where I can work on this other side. I work better going one direction than I do another, so pulling the chisel toward me is a little more accurate than pushing it away from me. So well, to my eye, I think I got this as good as it needs to be. And so I'm going to glue it in place. I'll show you what it looks like here. Of course, this is just the first one. Got to do 2 of them. And I haven't actually tapped it all the way down in there yet, but I think it'll go. So there you go. There's kind of a close-up of what that side looks like. And we don't have this side done yet, but that kind of proves to me that it's going to work. Been working on the fretboard and binding and things on this guitar this morning, and it's afternoon now, but I've got everything pretty much laid out the way I want it here. I'm going to try to get this binding glued on to the fretboard. I've got the fretboard profiled to the size of the neck, and all of this is still, you know, the neck itself is still oversized, so I can shape it up to this. But I guess it's just time to get it glued on, so let's get her done. Put the glue on really thin. I think it's going to work just fine for this. Got to make sure I get the right side out because one side's just a teeny bit thicker. Trying to force it up in there as good as I can. Get all of the little pieces down in as flat as possible. And the only problem is that every fretboard's got just the tiniest different shape to it, so every one of them needs a little bit of something different, and this one's going to need a few little wedges poked in a few places. I'm just going to go up and down through here and poke in a few different wedges. These are just single edge razor blades that kind of take up some space, and they may or may not be enough. Actually, I may have to force some more stuff in here before I'm done. It's getting pretty tight up in here now. It's still a little loosey-goosey down in these areas, but I think I can force different pieces in at different places and tighten it up. One of the main things is I want to make sure it's all pushed down as far as it'll go. I think that's pretty good. Just looking down it, see if I see anything that looks strange or curved or anything. It looks pretty straight, looks pretty good. We'll probably just let it go with that for right now. And give that a few hours to set up. Going to try something that will probably be fairly controversial when you see this, but I still think it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to cut this fingerboard in half right on this fret. I'm going to use this little tiny razor saw that's only saws an 8 or 9 thousandths cut, and I'm just going to cut it right in two right here. And you might say, well, why would you do that? Well, that way I can fit this into my laser cutter, and I can fit this into my laser cutter, and then I can do a perfect inlay of the person's name here, and I can also do perfect inlay of the different dots and whatever we decide to put in this. Yeah, and then, you know, when you put it back on here, it'll all be glued solid. It won't make any difference whatsoever, and the binding will cover up the edge. You'll never know that it was sawn in two. And like I said, it's going to be perfectly solid. There's no reason to think that that would cause any structural problem or any sound problem or anything. It won't create any problem whatsoever. And yet it will make it far easier and much a better job to just go ahead and let the laser cutter do all the work. So that's what I'm planning. It may take a little work to get set up to do that with the laser cutter, but it'll sure make a pretty job when we're done. So you saw a minute ago where I glued these bindings on here. After I thought about it, I took the bindings back off, as you can see. So that's why I did that. Got a little ahead of myself, as usual. So anyway, I'm going to put up my close-up glasses, and I'm going to start making this cut right through the middle here. It would be easier if I put it in some sort of a vise, but I'm trying to saw it where you can see what I'm doing. So there you go. Pretty sure it's about to go. Just trying to get it where I can get a hold of it better. That's my problem, is I can't hold it still. These things get in there and they pinch is the problem, and it just makes it very hard, that last little bit. There it is. Cuts it off just as slick as it can. So when we put it back together, you can look at it right there and you can see that you'll not be able to tell it just by, you know, that. It's just something you won't even be able to tell at all. And it won't be a problem for fretting or anything. Anyway, that's what I did. Right or wrong, that's what I did. And I tried to cut it as close to the middle as I could to fit it into my laser cutter the best. And never tried that before, but I felt like it was worth a try. And I don't really think it will create any problem because I've thought it through, and I think it'll be just fine. Here we go. Well, you can see there on the first half of the fretboard how well it did it, you know, on the inlay. And those are absolutely perfectly smooth. You cannot even feel them. They're just glass smooth. You seriously cannot feel them at all. That's what the name looks like and everything. And keep in mind, this is a gift for this particular person, and he would already know about that if you're seeing this clip. So it's not a big deal. But that's what it looks like before the inlay on the second half of the fingerboard. And, you know, again, we cut that apart because it just wouldn't fit in the laser cutter. So it's going to be really nice if it all fits in there and works. We'll see. Well, here's what it looks like after the glue up on the binding on the sides. Turned out really nice. You can see the name there again and the inlay, and turned out really, really nice. I feel like it's perfect. You know, it feels like one solid fingerboard now, you know, where I had to cut it in half. So I was thinking about that, and I don't really feel I need to do this, but I thought it's not that hard to just go ahead and inlay a piece. You know, so I cut a piece of ebony, and I'll lay that right here. I'm gonna actually route this out and then glue this down in there, and that'll strengthen that joint in case anybody ever and then, you know, I'll smooth this out so it'll be perfectly flush, and that way if anybody ever has to take this apart in the future, it shouldn't be a problem. Now, the tricky part of this is I can't go too deep. In other words, I should be able to go this deep and not hit the fret slots, is what I'm saying. So that's what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to glue this in there, and that should make it just as strong as it ever was, I would think. We'll see. We're going to give it a shot anyway. Thought I better just double check the depth. It looks like it's cutting deep to me, but probably not. 62 thousandths. This is 60. This is 59 to 62 thousandths. So I guess we'll go with that. That's pretty close. Well, a vacuum or something would be real nice on this. I could put the blower on that, but I don't know. I think I'll just vacuum it. I did all the rest of the routing off camera, but just looks like it fits pretty dang good. So I'm pretty happy with that. Looks like there's a very light rough spot or two, and I'll just use this chisel, scrape those off. That maybe I just didn't get the bit in all the areas there. So just to make sure that it's flat on the bottom, just scrape across, cleaning up the wall there a little bit where, you know, I can't see that side as good because it's away from me. This side seems to be pretty good. I think that's going to be good enough. Once again, real good glue coverage is a must. One side of this would probably be adequate, but it doesn't hurt to cover both sides. It makes them stick really good. Seems to go down in there just about perfect. I'll just get a couple of clamps and maybe a little something to clean that up. I'll show you what that looks like. Well, it's my belief that that will be as strong as it ever was now. That inlaid in there just perfectly, just about perfectly flush too. I'll have to sand it maybe a tiny bit, but it's pretty darn good. So I'll just let that set a couple hours and then we'll move on from there. Well, there's what she looks like after it's all dried and smoothed out. You can see it a little bit, but it's no big deal, and it's plenty strong. Especially considering that, you know, it's the only time that that strength really even becomes an issue is if you take the fretboard off. And now that I've splined that across there, you know, I don't think taking the fingerboard off, fretboard off would be a problem. So we'll move on from there. Often I put the frets in before I put the binding on, and then I file the frets off flush. On this one, I'm going to go ahead and put the frets in afterwards, and I'll let the fret tangs hang over the edge of the binding, which is kind of normal, maybe even more common. So it's not a big deal, one way or the other. The difference is here I have to cut the tangs off the frets, so it takes a little bit longer actually. Feels pretty good. What I can do now is take like a razor blade or something like that and scrape it right along there and get it smooth. The trick with scraping something like this is you want to scrape with your razor blade at a slight angle so you don't catch in these slots. If you do it like that, then you'll go over the slot. It feels pretty nice. And then you could take sandpaper like this. This is 180. I think I'll go to 220 on that and sand the edges here. I actually found some 320 and I think I'll use that. That'll really make it nice. All the slots are filled with sawdust. I got a lot of cleanup here, so I'm going to get all this cleaned up and we'll move on. You may be able to see that I've just cut out my name there with the laser cutter, and I'm picking it up, I'm turning it over, and the reason I'm turning it over is because I cut it upside down, and the reason I do that is that the laser cutter, I've learned, cuts on a slight bevel. So when you turn it over, then the bevel is narrower at the bottom then. Or that's the way it is now that I have it turned over the other way. This is super delicate. It wants to break just by looking at it, and that is the truth. So I think it'll fall right down in there with that small bevel down now. Perfect. Like, it's the best ever. It just works great. Yeah. So it just works perfectly that way. So much better than the other way I was doing it. I was doing it right side up all along, and that's a mistake. When you turn it over, it just works like a dream. And now the problem is, it fits down in there, don't get me wrong. It's just that it's kind of rocky. It's very fragile. You need something to hold it down in there while you glue it. And maybe the very best thing will be the edge of a razor blade to just push it down in there flat, and it doesn't take up much surface space. That's just perfect. I'm just making sure I've got it down in there. Actually, believe it or not, I had two razor blades going on there. Wow. I am not sure yet. I'm turning the handles of the razor blades down, which is kind of dangerous because I'm pushing down on the blade with my finger. But I think that'll work. And of course, always the spray is out of arm's reach whenever I do this. I never think about it ahead of time. And that that should do it. I think that'll do it. That seems really, really, really nice. I hope it is. I hope it's as nice as it seems. You know, the wood was about 50 thousandths of an inch thick. It appears that about half of it is down inside there, which is good enough, if it is good enough. And now I would like to sand that off smooth to make sure before I go any further. But that looks really good. I'll do a little sanding there and I'll show you what it looks like. There you go. That turned out about as perfect as it could turn out. There's no fill in that whatsoever yet. It may get a teeny bit of fill, but there's so minor amount that it wouldn't matter. Some people ask me why I put the Rosa on the mandolins and only Rosa on the guitars. And that's just kind of the way Gibson did it. They put the Gibson and I put the Rosa on my mandolins just like they did. And I just put my name on the guitars. Just the way I've always done it. So, since that works so perfectly, now I'm going to do the same thing down here and I'll show you what that looks like. Well, I cut out the petals. You can see each individual petal cut out there. And this is a lot more tricky to inlay. Now this I did not flip, and the reason is if I flip this, then the little designs that are etched in the top, and there's 3 pieces, would be on the bottom, and that wouldn't work. So I don't know. I just left it like it is. We'll just have to see how well this works. And the truth is, I don't know. It'll probably be fine. This is a really touchy inlay. It wants to jump and go all kinds of places. So sometimes it goes real easy, but most of the time not so much. Off camera I sharpened up my little probe here just by doing this on my whetstone, and I think it worked. It makes it, you know, as long as that point is really sharp, you can pick these pieces up really easy. And trust me, every little advantage you can give yourself is worth doing on this. Boy, you just touch it and it bounces out of place. That's the thing about this. I may have to get the picture out to match these up. It's very difficult to match these up, actually, because if they flip over, you can't tell where they go and if you've got it in the right place or not. I'm really not sure where that one goes. I don't know. Pretty sure it goes over here somewhere. It's not that easy. I'm going to have to get the picture out. It's really hard. I think I've got these all right that are in there, but this one I'm not sure about, and the rest of them, I mean, I know about where most of them go, but getting them exactly right and about is 2 different things. I think this one goes here. Yeah, pretty sure of that. Still not too sure of this one. Well, I went ahead and finished that off camera, but it looks beautiful. Just looks beautiful. The only negative is that it's sticking up a little high. I'm afraid I might lose a little detail when I sand it down, but it may be okay. And then again, I can always add more detail if I really feel I need to. I don't know if you noticed, but all those pieces, the reason I cut them out individually is each one of those pieces has the grain going a different direction. That makes it look a lot more like a flower than if you put all just one big piece. With the grain going different directions, it makes it look like it grew that way, you know, and it looks natural. It looks really cool. A lot more work, obviously, but you know, you're going for looks at this point, so the work doesn't really matter. That did a nice job. That penetrates down in there really well, that CA glue does. Put a little bit more on top there and let it wick its way down in. Rake it around a little bit. That'll lock it all together. And then I'll wick it up with this and try to get it out of the spots back here where I don't want it. And finally I just spritz it with this thing's out, so I'm just trying to get the last little bit of squirt out of it there. There it did. It squirted it. That basically is probably the last squirt that one's going to make. But that's okay. It did its job. You might as well use it all up because they don't give that stuff away. That looks pretty fine to me. Now we've got to do the petals.